All right, given the current situation, most of Americans with this COVID-19 deal, have a lot of time at home. And where you can spend it on the computer or watching Netflix or trying to come up with some home workout. And after you're done with all of that, you can do some reloading. And that's where I'm at right now. So, I'm going to walk you through kind of my little setup right here that I got going right now. Pretty simple. I got a single stage press, I got an automatic powder measure, and just some of my basic reloading setup. The basic Lee single stage reloading press. Here's just what I've been using lately as far as some of my bullets that I've been experimenting with. My dies are these guys right here. So 6.5 Creedmoor custom grade dies, Hornady. I've got here's my powder measure. I've got a caliper, bullets. These are just a couple of the test ones that I'm doing. Basically, I'm mirroring these bullets right now, so they're good as a reference point. Here's my already primed full-length resize brass. Here's some other brass back in there that is ready to go for when I want to do it. I got some one shot here. It's always good to keep that kind of stuff close because you always remember without some one shot or some lube, man, that first couple is really tough. So it's always good to keep it around your stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much my basic outline. This is going to be my go box, so I've got the load already printed up on it and everything like that. So the fully loaded ones are going to go right in here, and I can put these leftovers in there. It's going to be from the same powder, same brass, same setup with that these currently loaded cartridges have. So yeah, that's pretty much it. What we're loading today is 6.5 Creedmoor. I am loading for hunting purposes, big game purposes. I've got Hornady once fired brass, large primer pocket. This is from Ruger Precision Hunter ammunition that I've shot. I've got a few hundred pieces of that already available to me. I realize that Lapua brass and or small primer pocket brass is ideal to load 6.5 Creedmoor and really get the most out of velocities and things like this. Large pocket primers can expand, especially with Hornady brass. However, the whole idea of me reloading is to, number one, keep the costs a little bit down. And I already have so much brass that I'm not necessarily worried about a lot of expansion and stuff like that. If I need to get new brass, I get new brass. I have a big bucket. I have a couple big tubes. Show you. I've got these guys full of once used brass. I'm not looking to shoot these things for, 15, 20 times a piece. I just want good performance, and that's pretty much what I'm looking for. So that being said, I'm using just generic brass, Hornady brass, nothing special. I'm not case trimming or anything like that. I do throw a measurement on the brass every once in a while, just to make sure they're all in the same ballpark. I've spent a lot of time in the past really paying attention to brass and going through the case trimming and things like that. I think it's very important for certain ammunition, and I think it's very important if you're getting very serious about long-range shooting. But the reality is, and what I found in my scenario, is that the law of diminishing returns was enacted. So I would spend an hour or 2 hours on 50 pieces of brass, and I would not see a difference downrange
with all my brass trimming and weighing and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't see a difference downrange. Now, keep in mind, I'm not shooting 1,500 yards. I'm not shooting 2,000 yards. I'm trying to create a solid hunting load that's seamless and pretty easy to use, pretty easy to do. Basically, my reloading is an exchange for having as much ammo as I want on hand, which is always a plus for me, and also keeping the costs relatively low. 6.5 Creedmoor ammo is really relatively cheap to begin with, so it's not like I'm saving that much money on reloading. It's just I'm coming up with a load that I specifically want, and a lot of that load when I get it dialed in. So they don't have a whole lot of offerings. What I'm currently loading, they have a couple. I think Federal has one as far as factory stuff, and HSM has a load that's shooting the 130 Bergers VLD hunting bullets. So I'm doing that because I want a lot of that ammo. I want it always available and to keep the cost down. And I've already have, once you shoot factory ammo for a while, you already have the components in place. What I'm using is BR2 primers. These guys right here, they're CCIs. They work really well. I've used CCI 250s as well. Those work good. A couple other options out there too. It's kind of like what you decide you can find. Because a lot of places, especially right now, I'm glad I picked up my my 8-pound jug of 4350 right now, because all the powder is just crazy right now. I'm gonna start loading for a excuse me. I'm gonna start loading for a 300 Ultra Mag, and it's really hard to find Rotumbo or H1000 or anything like that right now. So that kind of sucks. But for now, I've got 8 pounds to keep my reloading going with the 6.5 Creedmoor. So we went over the brass. What I'm starting with is full length resized brass and already primered. So we're not going to go through the whole full length resizing or just the forget what they call that. I'm drawing a blank right now. Where you just resize the opening. I'm drawing a complete blank. Okay. Anyway, these are full length resized and primed. That's what we're starting with. So we're just basically doing the powder, throwing powders, and we're seating the bullets. So I'm gonna calibrate this guy right now. I got a little 50 deal here, so I'm gonna. If you want, there's a couple of videos on these linemen that are pretty good. This one's pretty good. I don't know. I haven't used anything else, so it is really pretty sweet for what I'm doing. Basically, I'm just calibrating it. There's a 50-gram little weight, and you set it on the deal, and you zero it. It's just like anything, just like any scale that you would use. Just zeroing it out. I got this little handy guy here, and then I'm going to zero that. And then I am going to refer my little powder deal here. I don't need the calipers yet. We're going to go to phase 2, but right now I'm just going to do the powders. I need my this guy. This guy's a little powder funnel, which is nice to have because you can kind of keep track of stuff. So I've got 43 grains of H4350 is my current load. I got 43 grains. I'm going to press enter. It's the orange button. And then 43. And then it'll do that. And then I will go auto repeat, which is kind of cool. So this is, I'll show you right now. I'll show you actually on the next one how it works. All right, so I just measured out this guy. It's only good to the 10th, which is fine, and I'll explain why here in a little bit. I'm gonna do this,
pour all my powders in. You kind of want to be a little slow when you're doing this, because I have had pieces of powder fly out on me. And put that back on, and watch. I'm on automatic setting, so once it reads it, it'll automatically pour the next powder charge. So I'm gonna make sure that this is all good there. I'm going to move it to the next one, and then that's ready. And then when that's ready, it'll ding. It's on 43, and that gives me it shows me auto 2, and good to go. All right, so just a real quick overhaul here. 6.5 Creedmoor. What my goals are is to get a long range effective hunting load. It's good out to longer distances. So long range meaning 500 to 1,000 yards on an animal, typically 800 or less. I'm trying to get more velocity out of my 6.5 Creedmoor to create more of an impact downrange. I'm not obsessed with velocity. I rarely, even shooting 300 ultra mags, 300 short mags, I'm not obsessed with velocity ever. Very rarely are any of my loads over 3,000 feet per second. However, the 6.5 Creedmoor shooting the 143s or the 140 Bergers, 143 LDXs, 140 Bergers, they're just going so slow. And from my personal experience, they may be consistent on paper, but when you're shooting an animal at 700 yards, 600 yards, 400 yards, the bullet still has to maintain a velocity to make an impact big enough on the bullet that the bullet does what it's supposed to do. In other words, you'll see those diagrams of bullets that are like 2,000 feet per second, and the thing's like mushroomed out. 1,500 feet per second, and the thing's like, half mushroomed out. And then it goes down the line. So if the bullet doesn't have enough velocity at point of impact to create the pedaling effect or the mushrooming effect or the jacket loss expansion effect that Berger has, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So it's great if you can hit paper or shoot targets out to 1,000 yards, but that's really fun. I love doing that. But for this specifically, I don't really care as much on what it's doing at 1,000 yards on paper as much as I care about how the bullet is going to react at 600 yards with a shot in the midsection, punching a midsection of a small animal, a big game animal, but a smaller big animal like a deer, specifically a Coues deer. What I've seen with the ELDXs, whether they're shot at close range or they're shot at long range, the ELDXs don't have a lot of impact out of the 6.5 Creedmoor. There's not a whole lot of expansion. I've seen deer shot at 150, and there's really not a lot going on. And I think that just has to do with how it's the makeup of it. It's supposed to hold together. But that doesn't really equate. With a great shot, that's great. It'll hold together and it'll punch a hole, and you'll still get good results. But that's not really. I want something that's going to give me the benefit of the doubt. So that's kind of why I'm using Berger. They do expand, they do explode once they enter in, and that really gives me the benefit of the doubt, what I've seen on animals downrange and that performance. So when you've got a lot riding on the line, such as, once in a lifetime Coues deer hunt or elk hunt or mule deer hunt, you kind of want that benefit of the doubt. I've seen awesome performance out of the ELDX on bigger guns like 28 Nosler, 300 Ultra Mag, 300 Win Mag. They've had awesome results, even a 7mm mag. But for a bullet that's only going 2,700 feet per second, maybe, because even what the box says, I think
they're calling on that box at 2,700, and it's like a 24-inch barrel. Most of the 6.5 Creedmoors are factory 22-inch barrel. So really, let's say 2,650. That's not doing a whole lot. That's not moving very fast out at downrange. So make a long story short, I'm shooting the 130s to try to get around 28 to 2,900 feet per second to create more downrange performance on big game at long distances, 500 to 800 yards. All right, let's see some bullets. I accidentally left this this guy on, and that's the thing about having it. All right, we're gonna shut this dude off. We're gonna shut this dude off. It's gonna. There we go. All right, so it doesn't keep rolling. I accidentally, you know, put this thing back on the shelf so that it would be kind of out of the way, and it started loading again. So I'm putting that back on there. Okay. I'm gonna be gentle with these guys. It's like a seriously precise piece of equipment here. All right, let's just see where we're at. I've got that out of the way, and then we're gonna go. I gotta set up. Let's do it. I might just load. The 6.5 targets are really good too. And actually what I think I'm gonna do, they're the exact same bullet. Exact same BC, exact same G7. They just have a little different jacket. So I'm gonna load a couple of those up too. Just because I put a new scope on the 6.5. So I want to use these targets, the VLD targets. I know I'm not going to be hunting with them because it's March. And what I'll do is I'll get my rifle dialed into these and make sure it's resighted in and dialed in, and even do some long range dope, and then load up some VLD hunting bullets, because who knows right now with all the powder and the COVID-19 stuff going on, I want to make sure that I have bullets for hunting season. So I've got about 50 left for hunting season, so I want to make sure that I'm not using any of those on targets that I could use these VLD targets for. And I don't mind hunting with these either. I'll hunt with these VLD targets too. They hold together a little bit better, which actually is not better in the Berger world. You don't really want them to hold together all that well, especially at long range. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a test here, just kind of get it in. So I've got this preset from my last load. So right now I'm going to make sure this guy's zeroed out, off on, zero you out. All right, so my desired length is 2.875. So let's see where we're at. Yeah, we're pretty close. I've got 2.8745. It's giving me some thousandths right in there, but that's kind of where I want it. One of the big things with seating bullets is it really does make a difference how you press it, even though the tolerances, it may be just because I have a cheap Lee reloader, single stage press. But if you know, we're dealing with hundredths of an inch, or, you know, those kinds of things. So you want to be real consistent in your approach to this. Is what I learned is that you kind of get in a rhythm and you have your set pressures. Because you can jam one in there and then it'll be a little too short. And then on the other hand of things, you can be really soft, and then you'll have a variance in your overall length by, you know, a couple hundredths here and there. So I just make sure that I'm trying to do it the same way every time. So I measure everything the right way.
That I didn't get. That one gave me a weird read there. So let me just see. I measure every single one of these. This is why I'm not. I don't mess around. Oh no, never mind. It's good. I measure every single bullet. So that's one thing that I do take pretty seriously. I don't measure the brass or anything like that, but the overall length I do, and obviously the powder I do, and it's so far given me the desired consistent results. Now I'm not shooting. When I start loading for my Ultra Mag, things get a little bit different. There's a lot of powder being burnt. There's a lot of room for inconsistencies with that particular. When you're burning 91 grains of powder, your primers become a big deal. Your brass becomes a really big deal. In other words, you know, some brass are inconsistent with case capacities and also like thickness. So it becomes a lot bigger deal when you're burning a lot more powder, shooting a Lapua or things like that. So I'll show you how I just do things so you can watch it up close here in just a second. All right, I've got my preloaded guys already primed. Oop, that was stupid. See what I just did there? By showing to the camera, I dumped all this powder out. That is a no-no. That one is no load one. Actually, I'm gonna like dump this back in there now. Yeah, no good. We put that off to the side. We're not loading that one. So I bring this. These are already loaded, primed. Put it right. Slide it in. Nice and snug up against there. Grab a bullet. These custom dies, they have this nice little deal here. It really is nice for bullet seating. You can kind of get it up in there. And what I like to do is set it on the bullet just like that. Get it nice and just slowly make sure everything's tight when you start getting in there. And it's all good. And just give it a little bit of a pressure. Comes out. Looks good. Ready. And then we'll measure it. Alright, now we'll measure it. Looks pretty good. It's giving me like a flyer, like a little 0.5 or whatever. That's okay. I'm totally fine with that. So that's it. And then I put that in the made box. And then I go do it again. And then back there. And then pretty soon, once I'm done loading up all these guys, I'll put them into my ammo box that I will take out shooting with me. And then it has everything that I need right here on it. It's really so yeah, so that was basically just a little bit of an idea of what's going on here up close. I couldn't really get me pulling down on the lever in the shot, but it's fine. So what's really important is labeling everything when you're reloading. I've gotten into a habit of doing that. More so, it's really important what primers you use, what powder you use. When I first started reloading, it was like, oh man, I'm never gonna forget this. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I had to give that one a little extra boost. It was kind of giving me a little bit long there. So that's better. All right. You think you're going to remember stuff, but not always will that be the case. especially when you like go through phases of reloading. Like I'll load up like 100 bullets or something like that, go shoot them and then have them, and then you come back to it and you're like, what was I using? What was the recipe? And you're like, I know I wrote it down somewhere. I put it on my phone or I wrote it on a piece of paper. And after a lot of trial and error and having to start from scratch because I didn't have things organized, I started really focusing on labeling everything. That's part of the reason why I'm putting stuff on these boxes too, which seems like a no-brainer, but it's always just good to reinforce it, have some redundancy there, just because really that's what it comes down to, is trying to be the most consistent as you can. That one's went in there pretty smooth. You can also have a feel of different brass and stuff like that. Some goes in a little like this. This is an HSM piece of brass. I could totally tell the difference when I pushed it in there versus a horny piece of brass. And it's just like anything too. If I have like a flyer shot, you want to keep a track of your shots when you're shooting. And not just shoot a 3-shot group and just kind of be like, oh yeah, it's all, it's in my scenario especially because some piece of brass may be different. And they may have inconsistent results. So if say I keep in mind what I'm shooting and make sure, okay, if I load up 3 that are all Hornady, or I see a couple that are Remington brass or some HSM brass in there, I'll keep that in mind. I'm not just shooting blind. So if I do see an inconsistency and it's related to a piece of brass, I will either throw that piece of brass out completely because I don't need them, I have enough brass, or I will just make some adjustments. In other words, I might trim the brass a little bit if that's what I think is the best scenario there. So always have an idea. That's, especially like I said, how I'm doing it. I'm more like results driven, so I'm gonna kind of spend a little less effort up front, like in this stage, and just make sure I'm fundamentally sound when I'm reloading, versus going over the top, like guys that are preparing for a bench rest match. I don't really need that kind of performance. I like the bench rest guys because they kind of paved the way for the normal guys to do a lot of reloading and just have an idea. So sometimes I'll give it a bump like that if it's a little long, but I don't know. Sometimes it. So that one it kind of stiff, but. See, it doesn't matter to me if the bullets are all shooting in the same spot. And really my kind of zero, I don't like to do a whole lot of like 100-yard zero. I do, especially sighting in stuff. I like to do a lot of 100-yard, just getting a scope dialed in. But really I like to test my accuracy or my, really get a good feel at 500 yards. To me, that's the benchmark, really shooting for a group. I like to shoot at 500 yards versus shooting at 100 or something like that. I think there's too much focus, personally, on 100-yard shooting. It'll drive you a little bit nuts, shooting at 100 yards because you're dealing with such small increments. But some cartridges don't like 100 yards. It sounds kind of weird, but there's a lot of testing that shows that like bigger cartridges, bigger bullets, they don't really stabilize perfectly well till they're like out at range a little bit. like shooting a 300 Ultra Mag, it's more realistic to shoot it at 500 yards to really measure results versus 100 yards, because that's when the bullet stabilizes. And I just got a 300 Ultra just built, like I was saying, a custom gun, but I really just got it. Most of it was getting it rebarreled, but it was an overall build too. I got a new stock put on it and all that stuff. I'm excited to show you guys about it. But I had a 300 Ultra that was like, it was a one inch gun at 100 yards. I mean, it was like, it was an MOA, one MOA gun, and at 500 yards it was a half MOA gun, and at 800 yards it was a better than half MOA gun. So it kind of showed me that I didn't need to put a whole bunch of emphasis on what's going on at 100, but to really pay attention to what's going on a little bit further out. And you can have the opposite effect too. You can be like lights out at 100, and then the wheels will come off after 500. You know, I know guys that have been shooting. I know a guy that had a 25-06 that he couldn't figure out what was going on out at distance, and then he finally started putting paper instead of shooting steel. And he was shooting paper at 600 yards, and he realized that at 600 yards his 25-06 bullet was tumbling because of the paper. Because when it hit the paper, it made looked like a broadhead or a piece of shrapnel hit it and set up a tight hole, which that's what it should do at paper at 600 yards. And we're talking about a 25-06. You know, that's booking. I don't care what bullet you're shooting. So it's just good to keep that in mind too, the gun and those kinds of things. I've had no problem with the Creedmoor, shooting it close, shooting it far, but just something to keep in mind. I don't like to get too serious. I don't like to get my calipers out and start reading groups unless it's like legit, really something that I feel like is worth it. 100 yards. It's good. I always do it. Look at the groups at 100 yards, but it's a place to start. That's not just because you have a gun that shoots there doesn't mean it'll shoot at 1,000 and vice versa. So anyway, enough reloading, ranting on this quarantine COVID little break I've had. So I've got a few loaded up. I'm gonna do another segment here in a little bit, a few days. I'm gonna full length resize like a ton of brass. So, and then de-prime them and prime them up and then go through the same process. So just knocking the dust off a little bit. It's been a week or two since I've reloaded. So I need to just making sure all my stuff is good, and I even managed to spill a bullet full of powder everywhere. So that's without a doubt what happens every time I reload anyway. All right, well, hopefully you guys are getting some reloading into. I'll be back at it and show you another video sometime. All right, take it easy. Stay safe.